Speaking of freaky deaky Negroes,
True.
what is it about the pimp that has kept it a cultural icon in the Black community? Could this revelation about Sean Combs, coupled with the revelations about numerous other Black stars, mean that the pimp as anti-heroes days are finally over? Someone says lounge always makes me think of revolution. I didn't know I had to always make you think of revolution. Jesus. I have this clip of an actor that so many people love, and many people don't remember this role he did in, I believe, 1982 with Christopher Reeve. You people know him as Christopher Reeve. I know him as Superman. Do you remember this movie? Pascal, do you remember this movie?
This looks familiar. Play it.
It's called Street Smart. Here, I'm going to play you a clip from Street Smart.
Now. She might take that shit, man. I don't have to go to Harvard to know what you're doing. You know what I'm trying to say to you, man? Do ya? Yes, you do. Well, then shut the fuck up. You don't tell me how people react to me. I know what people are doing no matter what they say. Because I read minds, you dig? I don't take no shit off of you. You're lying through your fucking teeth. I know it, you know it, and this fucking hoe know it.
Come on, leave him alone.
Yeah? Yeah? You think you patronizing now? She might take.
That wasn't the response I thought you were going to have, Pascal. Invisible Pascal.
I thought that was Christopher Reeve.
Oh, Christopher Reeve said that. He's not Christopher Reeve. He said, Morgan, your pimp hand is rather strong.
Yo, he laid the pimp hand.
I again, you know, not the response I thought you were going to have. Definitely is. Maybe you not being there is your excuse to just like double down on your pimping. There was a I thought I sent it to you, Tucson, for whatever reason. I guess it didn't go through, but there was a montage that someone had posted of these scenes. You know, and they varied actually. From the more of the stereotypical images you got in the 70s and 80s to more of the sexual coercion you get in movies like Set It Off. You guys remember that film where it starts off Jada Pinkett has to, or doesn't have to, but I guess she has to sleep with her boss for an advance on her salary so she can help pay for her brother's college, who later gets killed, and then they start robbing banks. Good movie, though. Go to the theater to see that.
It is a good movie.
But it definitely shows different forms of coercion. How does the proliferation of pimp culture in the Black community intersect with broader issues of systemic racism and economic inequality?
That's a really good question. I think this is one of those questions where you wish you had a Black feminist scholar on the show, like Nicole Alexander Floyd, to talk about the intersectionality of pimp culture in Black popular culture fiction and film. I think that with the rise of the 70s blaxploitation movie and the popularization of urban ghetto life and the normalization of the cool pose of black film, that all forms of abhorrent behavior become normalized and become just a stereotype of Black life. And I think one of the places where that becomes the most correspondent is the pimp. The pimp is a tragic figure. I mean, he's the bottom basement of criminals who makes all of his money abusing women, He has no skill as a criminal. He can't rob. He can't do anything. All he does is uses the gift of gab to just, you know, leech off women.
But does he? And
Does he
and
have
that's kind of what you're describing, and this is just my opinion. What you're describing is the Hollywood depiction of what a pimp is. And in everyday life, they don't necessarily look like that. A lot of times it's couples strung out, and this is a way to, get money so they can not be sick. That's the most common I've ever seen.
Yeah, in other words, it's not the typical.
It's not glamorous, and it's not.
Oh no, I wouldn't. I would never call it glamorous. I don't think any aspect of street life is glamorous. But I think it's been depicted as that way. I think it's been normalized as that way in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really took off, particularly in hip hop, with the way it was normalized. With, I mean, I don't think does pimp culture really start with West Coast hip hop?
No,
No, because
no.
you have.
In the music or in general.
In the music, yeah, Slick Rick, right? Slick Rick has that song "Treat Him Like a Prostitute." Remember that song?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't start in the music in the West Coast, but it takes on a culture of itself in the music. But again, part of the problem I have with what happens in hip hop is that it takes crime becomes an aesthetic of the music overall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pimping becomes part of that. But I think to answer your question directly,
yeah,
the normalization of pimping as a lifestyle is part of the consequence of criminal underclass, what the dominant society calls underclass behavior, becoming mainstreamed as what they assume is normative black life.
Would you say sometimes those roles are written or sang about by a certain bourgeois element of black people that try to commodify underclass ideology?
Absolutely.
Toussaint, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Superfly was written by truck drivers?
Okay.
Well, one of those truck stops I was at, there was this brother with a really bright suit. He took no guff from the man, I'll tell you what. Toussaint, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think one thing that Pascal said, well, I mean, he said many things that are important, but one thing that stood out to me was the word normalize. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we're going to even examine this and bring any of it to light, we're going to have to look at things that we thought were normal that are actually coercive and exploitative. But those things just seemed really normal to us. And
name one.
Dating underage girls.
Like 15, or I'm 45 and I'm dating a 20-year-old?
You're 45 and you're dating a 15-year-old.
Okay, that's gross.
That is gross. But it's taking time for people to say that that's gross.
It's taking a long time for that to be legally gross.
True.
I mean, I've said on this show, and I'll say it again, I think a big reason why some artists from the 70s don't want to come back is because, their history is so public of sleeping with underage women, doing kind of outlandish things that were laughed about in the press 40, 50 years ago, like adopting an underage girl so you could screw her.
Yeah.
That now, you don't want those stories coming out. They may hinder ticket sales. But how common is that today in the States? I mean, it's a little more common where I live, sadly. But how common
Right.
is that where you are?
I think it's pretty common. I
Really?
think it's normalized. I
Mhm.
think it's overlooked. When I was in high school, there was plenty of girls who were dating guys who were, we'll say, over age.
Mm.
I remember one, she met him on the internet, and we were all trying to convince her that he was just way too old.
How old was he? Do you remember?
He was like in his 30s, like 34.
Yikes. Yikes.
And she was
What were
like
they talking about?
15, but she was an immature 15. Not that a mature 15 would have made the deal better, but it was like she was really immature.
What do you say to people that push back on that, what you just said, and said, well, in certain communities, this age gap is a little more accepting?
I think the tide is turning against that.
Okay.
Gen Z doesn't like it.
Okay.
Gen Z
Do we,
is
do we
calling it
care
out.
what Gen Z likes or not likes?
I mean, their taste will become the prevalent taste soon enough.
Yep.
So Gen Z is not into it. It's becoming more and more public. People are scrutinizing marriages like Jay-Z's and Beyonce's, where the age gap is like 12 years, and where they met when she was underage.
Mhm.
And I mean, Jay-Z is a guy who was friends with R.Kelly.
So
He's
everyone that's friends with R.Kelly is a sexual predator?
I'm not saying that.
Then why'd you bring it up?
I'm just saying he's managed to sort of scrub the internet of that information.